Okay. Our client today is Rachel Greene from Friends, and the following is her case history. Rachel Greene, a 24-year-old female, presents with relationship issues as she breaks off an engagement and moves in with her friend in New York City. Rachel has a complicated relationship with her family and is primarily dependent on them in many aspects. Rachel wants to discuss adjusting to her new independent lifestyle in the city and newfound friends. Rachel has grown up trying to live a life to please her family and ex-fiance, but abandons this life and needs to become more self-sufficient. During the session, Rachel and the therapist will address the gender stereotypes present in her home life and how this affected her outlook on relationships and professional drive. Through collaboration, we will work to reframe her perspective on a woman's place in the household and identify career goals she wants to reach. Now we'll be transitioning into our therapeutic session. Good morning, Rachel. What brings you in today?
Well, I recently left my fiance, and my friend Monica thought I should talk to someone about it.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to reach out to a counselor. Tell me more about what happened.
Oh gosh. Well, it all started about a half hour before the wedding. I was in the room where they keep all the presents, and I was looking at this gravy boat, this really gorgeous Lamage gravy boat, when all of a sudden I realized that I was more turned on by this gravy boat than by Barry. And then I got really freaked out, and that's when it hit me how much Barry looks like Mr. Potato Head. You know what I mean? I always knew he looked familiar, but anyway, I just had to get out of there, and I started wondering, why am I doing this and who am I doing this for? So I jumped out of the bathroom window and I just didn't know where to go or what to do. And my old friend Monica is the only person I knew who ever lived here in the city. So I just ran to her apartment.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like you've been through a lot this past week. It seems like seeing this gravy boat helped you realize that you weren't attracted to Barry after all.
Not just not attracted to him, I don't think I ever really loved him. My dad introduced me to him a few years ago at this gala we attended for his hospital. We went on a couple of dates, and next thing I knew, I was engaged and about to get married.
Hmm. What were the dates like leading up to this engagement?
I will say that Barry took me on some of the most amazing dates. Our first date was on the Hudson River. We went out on the river in his boat and had the most elegant dinner. I'm talking caviar, flaming menage. He pulled out the works for that date.
Hmm. You enjoy yourself?
Yes and no. We got into a fight about the boat even on our first date.
What was the fight about?
Well, to give you a little more context, when I was 15 years old, my dad bought me my first boat.
Your first boat at 15?
Well, yeah, he was trying to cheer me up because my pony was sick. Anyhow, I've been sailing my whole life, and my dad taught me how to sail, and I must have picked up some bad habits from him.
Bad habits like,
Well, when I was teaching my friend Joey how to sail, I was kind of mean and maybe even yelled a couple of times. It got to the point where Joey didn't even want me to teach him anymore. And that's when I realized I was just like, oh God, I've become my father. I've been trying so hard not to become my mother, and I didn't see this coming. So we got into a fight and just ended up going home.
okay, so you learned how to sail from your father and you didn't realize the way he taught you wasn't exactly kind.
Exactly. I felt so embarrassed. I even apologized to Joey.
Hmm. Did you apologize to Barry?
Well, no, but he had never sailed before and was going to literally sink the boat if I left it up to him.
Sounds to me like you didn't feel safe with Barry on the boat.
Not really.
Well, what was your second date like?
Ugh. Our second date was absolutely stunning. We had dinner at the top of the Empire State Building at sunset. It was beautiful and dinner was delicious. And at the end of the date, Barry gifted me this gorgeous 5 carat diamond bracelet. I swear I couldn't stop staring at it for months.
Wow. Do you think that bracelet symbolized his love for you?
Well, no, it symbolized what he was willing to buy for me. Oh, I never loved Barry. I just loved the life he could provide me with, like the fancy dinners and the gorgeous gifts.
Hmm. Yeah, that can be a tough realization. How are you feeling right now?
Honestly, a little dumb. I really thought all those things would make me happy.
I can understand that feeling. Think something would make you happy and it does the complete opposite. What traits or attributes attracted you to Barry to want to marry him in the first place?
Well, he's pretty well off financially and a very respected dentist. My parents always wanted to make sure I was well taken care of, so it just made sense.
Now, Rachel, based on what you've told me so far, I think you'd benefit a lot from feminist therapy.
I'm not sure what that means, but I'm not one of those bra-burning radical feminist types.
Actually, Rachel, anyone can benefit from feminist therapy. So we would focus on bringing awareness to some of the gender role messages society and even your family have placed upon you. We can identify some of the messages of oppression that you've been taught to believe, and we can reconstruct them with more self-enhancing beliefs. Through this work, the hope is for you to develop a sense of personal and social power so you can recognize the power of relationships and connectedness and trust your own experiences and inner intuition.
I've spent so much time trying to please others and fit into this picture perfect life my family wants for me, and I couldn't do it with marrying Barry. I've been dependent on my father and his money my entire life, and although it's terrifying, I'd rather figure out how to be an adult than be stuck in an unfulfilling marriage. So I'll give anything a try at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think leaving an unfulfilling marriage is a great first step to discovering who you are as a person and as a woman. Tell me a little bit more about your home life growing up.
Growing up, I never really had to worry about things. My nanny did most of the caretaking while the maid took care of the chores. My dad was always working, so money was never an issue. And it wasn't until I moved to New York that I had to figure out things like paying bills and getting a job.
I mean, that must be a really big change for you. Tell me more about your relationship with your dad.
Well, I've always been his little girl, but nothing ever seemed good enough for him. He called me the day I left the altar, all upset that I wasn't going to marry Barry. All my life I've been told, "You're a shoe, you're a shoe, you're a shoe, you're a shoe." And today I stopped and I said, "What if I don't wanna be a shoe? What if I wanna be a purse or a hat?" You know? And my dad didn't get the metaphor and thought I wanted him to buy me shoes or a hat, but he just didn't get it. So he cut me off financially. He said I needed to find a husband that would take care of me like he took care of my mom.
Hmm. Sounds like your father had a whole life already planned out for you.
He did, and I was just supposed to marry this dentist, stay at home with our kids, and do just as my mom did. But I don't want a life planned out for me by someone else. It's my life and I want some say in it.
Yeah, I mean, that's completely normal. You shouldn't have to live your life for others.
I've been doing it for so long, it almost seems like second nature. My dad is a perfectionist at heart, and we've always had to look and play the part of this perfect family.
Hmm, that seems difficult. What did playing this part entail exactly?
My dad was always working. He's a heart doctor, and the job can be stressful. My mom would meet him at the door after work with a whiskey neat and a pack of cigarettes. I swear he could smoke that whole pack in a day, which, thinking back, was pretty hypocritical. He was a doctor and a heart doctor at that.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds pretty frustrating. It seems like your mom catered to your dad's needs almost like a mother, not a wife. What was your parents' dynamic like?
Well, they were never really very affectionate towards one another. My dad took care of the bills, my mom stayed at home, but she was never really that involved with us. She'd leave me and my sisters at the house with our nanny while she hung out with her friends at the country club.
Hmm. How do you think your mom felt about that arrangement?
Well, my mom got to enjoy all the luxuries of being wealthy, but I don't recall her ever really being truly happy, which makes more sense now that they are starting the process of divorce.
Wow. I mean, it seems to me like you and your mom are going through something pretty similar.
Yeah, it was really nice connecting with her. We never really talked about relationships and stuff growing up. She wasn't really the nurturing, motherly type of mom you'd want.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about some of the gender stereotypes that you were brought up with. So, in general, women are expected by society to be nurturing, caring type of people. And it sounds like your mom didn't really fit that role that you wanted.
Not really. She was always preoccupied with her friends gossiping about who was having affairs with who at the country club.
You know, maybe she felt the need to talk about others because she felt unfulfilled in her own marriage.
I never really thought of it that way, but it makes sense considering I didn't really see her smile that much.
Hmm. You see the divorce coming? Like, they fight often.
No, they didn't even talk to each other. How was I supposed to know they were having problems?
When you were a child, it wasn't your job to know.
Fair. She did confide in me recently that she was proud of me for leaving Barry and even mentioned to me that I know you didn't marry your Barry, but I married mine.
Wow. I mean, it sounds like she was unhappy for a very long time. Why do you think she stayed?
Like I said, probably to uphold this image of this picture perfect family, even though we definitely were not a perfect family.
Yeah. It sounds like your mom was also expected to marry a man for financial security. And in turn, you too were expected to do the same.
Wow, I never really thought of it that way. Now that I think about it, my grandparents have mentioned how my mom grew up in poverty, and to her parents, marrying my dad was the ticket out of that situation.
Sounds to me that your mother married your father so she could live a more comfortable life than what you grew up with. You know, this reminds me of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Are you familiar with this idea?
Not really. Tell me about it, please.
Yeah. When talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's important to remember that until the prior need is met, none of the above needs are met. So, in your mother's situation, because she grew up in poverty, she couldn't fulfill her love and belonging needs because she was more focused on ensuring her psychological safety and security needs like food, water, health, employment, and other resources that were met first.
Wow, I guess I had always had those things thanks to my dad's job and money. I had never stopped to consider that maybe my mom didn't have those things growing up.
Yeah, it's important to step inside other people's shoes once in a while. It can give us a more holistic perspective of our parents, their trials and tribulations, and why they acted the way they did when raising children.
Yeah, I really wish I had that perspective sooner, I guess.
I think it's also possible to consider your mother may have struggled to connect with you and your sisters because she also didn't feel like she got a voice in her life choices.
Yeah, I never realized how much we had in common. I'm just glad I didn't make the same mistake as her. But now I have bigger fish to fry, like finding a job and paying rent.
Exactly. Finding a job and paying rent would be in that security and safety level of needs. So before you can focus on love and belonging, you have to address these issues first.
That makes sense.
Let's see. What are some steps you can take to address these needs?
Well, my retail therapy probably didn't help. Earlier today, I went job hunting, but just ended up shopping instead.
Why'd you end up shopping?
Well, as it turns out, I'm trained for absolutely nothing. The employers kept telling me I had no transferable skills. It was really disappointing and discouraging. Again, I couldn't deal with all those emotions of feeling like a failure, so shopping always makes me feel better. So I bought, I don't need a job, I don't need my parents. I've got great boots.
Okay. You mentioned previously that your father cut you off financially. Did you have money for a shopping spree right now?
Well, no, I used his credit cards, but after Monica helped me to cut them up. I don't have daddy's money anymore, but I don't know how to deal with all the stress of adulting. I feel so helpless and powerless, not knowing how to navigate any of this.
Okay, well, let's take a step back. What do you think is the most powerful thing you could do for yourself right now?
Well, I've thought about getting a job just so I can prove to him that I don't need his money or need to marry a man that I don't love to make it in this world.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think finding a job that can meet your financial needs will help you feel more empowered and move forward in working towards your love and belonging needs. Do you have any leads on job opportunities here in the city?
Well, my friends and I go to this coffee shop every day, and the owner, Gunther, is basically in love with me, so I could probably get a job there, but who wants to pour coffee for a living?
Everyone has to start somewhere. Do you feel embarrassed to work as a barista?
Well, yeah, I've never had a job before, nor did I have a good role model in regards to work ethic. My dad almost had an addiction to work, and my mom just lived off him and his money, so she never really worked either.
Hmm. What would you say if we could reframe your outlook on work? What would that sound like?
Well, what's there to reframe? I have absolutely no training in anything.
Well, okay, let's talk about some of the environmental factors that led you to this moment. So you mentioned you don't have a good example of healthy work ethic, so it's not like you were set up to succeed in the beginning.
I mean, that's a good point. I have no basic life skills because the maid took care of the house, daddy always took care of the finances, and the nanny took care of us.
Okay, so instead of saying, I have no life skills, we could say, I lack life skills because I wasn't taught any growing up, and learning them now may be difficult, but it is essential to adulthood.
I like that idea. It feels much more empowering. I don't have to keep being clueless. I can decide to learn and change and grow.
Exactly. Rachel, we could find a women's group that you could join and get connected with other women in situations similar to yours. This could be very beneficial to you as you are discovering the gender stereotypes and gender norms that you were taught growing up, and you're actively changing your perspective on these issues. What do you think of this idea?
I'll keep it in mind. I'm not really used to having a friends group, and I'm still getting used to the group of friends Monica introduced me to. I didn't plan on becoming as close with her other friends as I have, but I've enjoyed it so far, so I could be open to it.
Absolutely. I can understand how that's a big adjustment. I mean, we can always revisit this idea later on. I think it could really benefit you by giving you a sense of community of women similar to you.
This sounds like a good idea. I would be open to talking about it later on.
That's great. Now, Rachel, is there anything else you'd like to discuss today?
Honestly, I feel pretty happy with everything we've talked about today. I feel more empowered about my ability to make decisions about my own life, and I'm optimistic about what the future holds for me.
That's great. What is something you could work on this week using your newfound power?
I think this week I'll focus on talking to Gunther about getting a job at the coffee shop. I think it'd be a great starting opportunity, and I'd even get to see my friends regularly while I'm working.
Great. Yeah, I'm really proud of the work we've done today. Although it may not feel as instantly gratifying as retail therapy, we've at least started this important work. What do you say to picking up next week, same time?
That sounds good to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, lastly, let's discuss the session and the techniques that were used. Rachel and the therapist discussed her struggles transitioning from being dependent on her ex-fiance and father to a more financially independent woman. During the session, Rachel examines the gender roles and norms brought on to her by her family and environment growing up. By using the feminist theory technique, gender role analysis, Rachel was able to identify gender stereotypes and began to understand how these have influenced her life and current situation. She analyzed her parents' expectation of her wanting to marry a wealthy man in order to be well taken care of. Rachel was expected to marry Barry by her parents, much like how her mother was expected to marry her father. She relates to her mother by being financially dependent on men and breaking off their relationships and finding their newfound independence. Rachel and the therapist addressed power analysis and power intervention when she discussed having a mother that did not live up to her expectations. Rachel inherited this lack of power, and it caused her to be stuck in an unhappy relationship, much like her mother. Empowerment was also a technique used during the session to help Rachel realize what the next step she could take to make her feel more independent and self sufficient. Rachel discussed her need to find a new job. The therapist and Rachel also used reframing and relabeling by examining her social influences growing up. She reframes the idea of having no life skills to saying she lacks life skills due to her parental figures not teaching her them. She realizes that learning life skills now may be difficult, but it is necessary to change her ways. The final feminist theory technique addressed was group work. The therapist suggests to Rachel that she could find connections within a community of women going through similar situations. Rachel discussed her interest in the group, but possibly at a later date due to her current situation.